Public narratives often focus on dramatic headlines, but official records can tell a different story. In this case, the timeline begins not with speculation or social media debate, but with a series of documented filings, public announcements, and corporate decisions that shaped the commercial journey surrounding Meghan Markle's lifestyle brand. Rather than relying on rumor, this examination follows the sequence of publicly reported events and asks how those developments fit together over time. One of the earliest turning points emerged in September 2024, when the United States Patent and Trademark Office declined an application seeking federal trademark protection for the name American Riviera Orchard. According to publicly available records, the office concluded that the proposed mark referenced a geographic location and therefore faced legal obstacles under trademark rules. The decision did not end the business effort itself, but it created an immediate challenge that required reconsideration of the brand's legal identity. That distinction is significant because trademarks provide businesses with an important layer of protection. Without a registered trademark, companies may face greater difficulty establishing exclusive rights over a commercial brand name. Legal experts frequently describe trademark registration as one component of a broader intellectual property strategy rather than a simple administrative formality. In this instance, the filing became an important milestone because it required the business to reconsider how it would present itself in the marketplace. Months later, observers noticed that the lifestyle venture introduced a different brand identity. Many reports describe the transition as a creative evolution or marketing refresh. Others questioned whether the timing reflected a practical response to the earlier trademark decision. Although commentators reached different conclusions, the documented sequence remained straightforward. An application encountered legal objections, and a revised brand identity appeared several months afterward. The trademark issue was only one element in a much broader timeline. Around the same period, discussions surrounding Meghan Markle's commercial partnerships continued to generate extensive media coverage. Streaming companies, publishing ventures, charitable initiatives, and representation agreements all became subjects of public interest. Some reports portrayed these relationships as stable, while others suggested significant changes behind the scenes. The challenge for anyone attempting to understand the story is separating confirmed events from interpretation. Another notable feature of the timeline involves conflicting media reports. During 2025, different publications described Meghan Markle's professional relationship with former British Vogue editor Edward Enninful in noticeably different ways. One account suggested that communication between the two remained cordial despite earlier disagreements, describing continued exchanges of birthday greetings and flowers. Another publication, appearing within roughly the same period, reported that the relationship had effectively ended and that the two were no longer in contact. Those contrasting accounts highlight a recurring difficulty in celebrity reporting. Anonymous sources often provide different versions of the same event, leaving readers with narratives that cannot easily be reconciled. Unless the individuals involved issue direct public statements, determining which version most accurately reflects reality can be difficult. The existence of conflicting reports does not automatically validate either account, but it does illustrate the importance of treating anonymous sourcing with appropriate caution. Questions surrounding a reported Vogue cover discussion further complicated the picture. Some reports claimed Meghan Markle hoped to appear on both British and American editions of Vogue and sought discussions regarding that possibility. Other reports rejected the suggestion entirely, stating that no such effort occurred. Because these accounts relied on unnamed sources rather than official documentation, the public was left without a definitive explanation. This pattern of competing narratives extends beyond individual relationships. Large organizations often make business decisions for reasons that remain confidential, while public reporting attempts to explain those decisions through interviews with unnamed insiders. As a result, multiple explanations can circulate simultaneously, even when only company executives possess the complete picture. When examining the overall timeline, an interesting pattern emerges. Rather than focusing on any single headline, it becomes more useful to consider the order in which significant developments occurred. Trademark questions, evolving media coverage, changes in commercial partnerships, and shifts in public messaging, all unfolded across several years, instead of appearing as isolated incidents. Looking at the chronology allows observers to understand how one event may have influenced later developments without assuming that every occurrence shares the same underlying cause. Equally important is recognizing the distinction between documented facts and broader interpretation. Official filings establish specific dates and legal actions. Public corporate announcements identify confirmed business decisions. News articles, by contrast, frequently combine verified information with anonymous commentary intended to explain events that remain largely private. Those different categories of evidence should not automatically be treated as carrying equal weight. Ultimately, the early stages of this timeline illustrate how legal filings and documented records can shape the direction of a commercial venture just as much as public relations campaigns. Whether discussing trademark applications, reported negotiations, or evolving media narratives, the strongest conclusions come from following the documented sequence rather than assuming motives that cannot be independently verified. As additional developments unfolded over the following months, those earlier milestones became reference points against which every later business decision would inevitably be measured, setting the stage for further questions about partnerships, branding, and the public narrative surrounding the enterprise. As the timeline continued into 2025, attention shifted from trademark filings to a broader question. How did the public narrative surrounding Meghan Markle's professional relationships compare with the documented sequence of business developments? Instead of focusing on isolated headlines, a chronological review reveals that several high-profile partnerships, media reports, and corporate decisions unfolded within a relatively short period. While each event had its own context, examining them together provides a clearer understanding of how perceptions evolved over time. One of the most discussed topics involved reports about Meghan Markle's relationship with former British Vogue editor Edward Enninful. During May 2025, different news organizations published accounts that appeared difficult to reconcile. One report suggested that despite previous disagreements over magazine coverage, the two maintained a cordial relationship, continuing to exchange birthday wishes and flowers. Another publication, released during roughly the same period, described the relationship quite differently, stating that communication had effectively ended. Neither account was accompanied by an official statement from the individuals involved that fully addressed the differing descriptions. As a result, readers were left comparing anonymous sourcing from separate publications without a definitive explanation. Situations like this are common in celebrity journalism, where unnamed sources frequently describe private conversations or personal relationships that cannot be independently verified. Rather than proving one version correct, the conflicting reports demonstrate how media narratives can diverge even when discussing the same subject. The uncertainty extended to earlier reports concerning a possible Vogue cover. Some stories claimed Meghan Markle hoped to secure simultaneous appearances in both the British and American editions of the magazine, and had sought discussions regarding that possibility. Other reports disputed the claim entirely, stating that no such request had ever been made. Without official confirmation, these competing narratives remained unresolved, illustrating how different interpretations of the same alleged event can circulate simultaneously. From a broader perspective, these inconsistencies matter because public perception often influences commercial reputation. Companies entering partnerships with well-known public figures typically evaluate many factors, including audience reach, brand compatibility, and long-term strategic value. However, the public rarely has access to the confidential discussions that shape those decisions. Consequently, observers often rely on media reporting to explain developments that may have far more complex business considerations behind them. Attention also turned toward public appearances and social connections. Commentators noted that during interviews and podcast conversations, certain long-standing friendships were mentioned, while other well-known associations received no reference. Some analysts interpreted those omissions as meaningful, while others argued that people naturally cannot mention every acquaintance during a conversation. Without direct statements explaining those choices, drawing firm conclusions from what was not said remains speculative. A similar discussion surrounded social media activity connected to Meghan Markle's lifestyle brand. Observers pointed out that several celebrities previously linked with her publicly did not promote the launch online. Some viewed this as evidence of changing professional relationships, while others cautioned that social media silence alone cannot establish the status of a personal or business connection. Public figures often choose not to endorse products for contractual, strategic, or personal reasons that remain private. These examples highlight an important principle when evaluating public narratives. Absence of evidence is not necessarily evidence of absence. A missing social media post, an omitted name in an interview, or the lack of a public appearance together may raise questions, but they do not automatically provide definitive answers. Responsible analysis requires distinguishing observable facts from assumptions about motivation. Meanwhile, business developments continued independently of media speculation. Following the trademark challenges involving the original lifestyle brand name, reports documented the introduction of a revised identity. The timing naturally prompted discussion about whether the rebranding represented creative strategy, legal necessity, or a combination of both. Publicly available records establish the sequence of events, but the internal decision-making process remains known only to those directly involved. Another area receiving significant attention involved professional representation. Meghan Markle's relationship with the talent agency William Morris Endeavour became the subject of conflicting reports. Official statements indicated that representation remained in place, while some anonymous sources suggested that senior executives were no longer personally engaged in managing the relationship. Because agencies often represent clients through teams rather than individual executives, outside observers had limited visibility into how responsibilities were allocated internally. This distinction is important. A public announcement confirming representation does not necessarily describe day-to-day operational involvement by every executive within an organization. Likewise, anonymous claims about reduced executive engagement do not automatically establish that a contractual relationship has ended. Both types of information describe different aspects of a business arrangement and should be evaluated accordingly. Across the entertainment industry, representation agreements frequently evolve over time as projects begin, conclude, or change direction. Agencies may assign different personnel to oversee specific clients without altering the formal relationship itself. Consequently, changes in executive involvement should not automatically be interpreted as confirmation that representation has ceased altogether. Viewed collectively, the events of 2025 reveal less about personal relationships than about the complexity of interpreting public information. Trademark filings, anonymous media reports, social media observations, and agency statements each provide pieces of a larger puzzle, but none independently explain the complete picture. Understanding the broader narrative requires comparing verified documentation with reported claims, while recognizing the limits of publicly available information. By the end of the year, the discussion surrounding Meghan Markle had expanded far beyond celebrity coverage. It increasingly focused on branding, legal strategy, corporate partnerships, and the challenges of maintaining a public business identity under constant media scrutiny. The next stage of the timeline would examine how organizational changes, staff departures, and evolving commercial agreements contributed to that broader story, offering additional context for understanding how multiple business developments unfolded over the same period.